Committee on Tuesday, the 20th of April. Just before we start the proceedings of the meeting, please can I remind all participants that this meeting will be recorded and copy archived for future viewing. Just a few housekeeping rules is could you mute yourselves when you're not speaking, and then that does help them with any background noise or feedback, particularly when other people are speaking as well. If you do wish to speak, can you please put either your hand up, if you're on screen, or use the chat function, and between myself and the officers, we'll make sure then that we try and pick everybody up from there. If anybody has any difficulty hearing or being heard when they're addressing the committee, then can you let either myself or one of the Democratic officers know? And if you do have a webcam, it could be useful then to try turning this off, as it will help with the broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth. So at least it can be here and be heard as well. I mean, signal seems to be okay tonight, but I know I was at a meeting last night when it was all over the place, so it still does vary, doesn't it? Okay, so I'd just like us to extend a welcome to everybody, and we'll start on the agenda. Okay, so item number 1, which is apologies for absence. So I believe we have Councillor Leighton Rowlands and Councillor Vince Bailey. Do we have any other apologies?
That's it, Chair, thank you.
Okay. Item number 2 then, which are the minutes of the meeting which were held on the 16th of March. Are we all happy to agree those minutes? Yeah, lovely. And then item number 3 then, which is to receive declarations of interest, including whipping declarations under the Council's Code of Conduct. Do we have any? No? Okay. Okay. So we've only got one actual item on the agenda tonight, but it is quite an in-depth report. And Tom Bowron is with us tonight, and he's going to start off the report. We also have Emma Reid and Marcus Goldsworthy here as well as cabinet members. So it is a big report, or it's quite an in-depth report. And Tom is going to start presenting the report, and he's going to present it into 3 parts because it is quite complex. And then what he's going to do then, he'll stop at the end of each part, and then we'll use that space then for questions around that section. Doesn't mean you can't refer back to that later on, but just to try and break it down a little bit. So I hope everybody's quite clear and happy around that. Okay, so Tom, I'm going to hand over to you if you'd like to start presenting the report.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Chair, and good evening, committee. I'm joined as well as with Marcus and Emma this evening with my colleague Helen Moses. Helen is our Strategy and Partnerships Manager, and she's done a huge amount of work in getting us to where we currently are. So Helen's going to be driving some of the slides for us this evening. This is a reference to your committee as part of the consultation process on our response to the climate change plan. And as we said at committee the last time I was here, this has been an iterative process over a number of months since the declaration of the climate emergency by Council in July 2019. So I don't know if, Helen, you're able to share the slides for us.
Hi, Tom. Yes, they're just loading now.
Great, thank you. We've got some interactive content in there, which just means it takes a little bit longer. I should work on my skills as a newsreader to be able to fill and pad out time. So this is, as I say, a reference from Cabinet. We're currently in the consultation phase of the response to the climate emergency. So your committee has the opportunity this evening to shape some of this plan as well, and we want to share some of the consultation work with you as well. So I'm going to take you through the first part, and then I'll hand over to Helen. So just a very quick recap. I know members will be aware of this, that we declared the emergency in July of 2019, and that declaration was in a number of parts, which are summarised here, which are looking at moving to a net zero carbon emissions for the authority by 2030, making representations to Welsh and UK governments to enable us to have the requisite powers and resources to help meet that target, to work with partners across the region, and we'll touch on that, and also to work with local stakeholders to develop a strategy, and it's that strategy that we're presenting to you this evening, Chair. So as I said the last time I was at committee talking on this subject, it's not a case that the emergency was declared in 2019 and nothing's happened since. A number of actions have continued, and it's important, I think, to flag to committee that in February of this year, the council, as part of the Public Services Board, which brings together a range of public sector organisations within the county, agreed a climate emergency charter. In March of this year, we started consultation on Project Zero, which is the climate change emergency response or challenge plan. We've also continued to reflect this work within the council's annual delivery plan, so that there's been a huge amount of momentum still whilst the work to deliver the plan has continued. I can see Councillor Robertson's got his hand up, Chair. I don't know if you want me to pause at this point.
Yeah, sorry, I've got a prompt come up saying can't display content. There was a problem displaying the content.
Can you see the slides on the screen now, Councillor?
I can't see it either. My screen's blank.
I've got a big black screen and it says can't display content.
Yeah.
There was a problem displaying the content.
Right. Okay.
I've got it on mine. Is everybody else? Is there anybody else who hasn't got it on theirs?
Yes, I haven't got it either.
You haven't got it.
I got exactly the same message.
Okay.
Same here. Same here.
Right. Thank you for flagging that
okay.
to us. What we'll do is, if I stop presenting that, and if I ask Helen to revert to the alternative way of putting the slides up, and we'll see if that's any better for members, so that you can all see that.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. And Helen. Sorry, Helen.
Can committee members see the screen now? Councillor Robertson's got his thumb up. This is a good sign. Yeah.
I've got mine.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. My apologies for that, members. Okay, so as I was saying, a huge amount of work has continued in terms of the momentum building around this piece of work, and what we're bringing to you now is the plan which starts to bring all of this activity together for the organisation. As I said earlier, the Cabinet considered the climate change challenge plan at a recent meeting and has referred that on to your committee this evening. The format of the challenge plan is that sorry, Helen, that's great. The format of the challenge plan is that there are 18 individual challenges which are posed in order that the organisation responds to the emergency and takes steps to address that work. It also includes information about the work that's already underway across all the council's departments, because what this is looking to do is become an overarching umbrella strategy that we take forward. So it needs to reflect all of that work that I talked about earlier, and it attempts then to show how the various strands of activity will all work together, and equally importantly, how it'll be governed and ultimately delivered. Those three areas of challenge are shown on your screen here, members, and these reflect the commitments around fulfilling our responsibility to current and future generations, demonstrating the need for strong leadership, and also the things that we need to do to make a difference now. So that's the overarching kind of architecture of the plan, and I don't know if anybody has any questions on the kind of background to where we've come from at this point.
Okay, do we have any questions on this part?
Where do I start? I mean, really. I mean,
Right.
you know my views on global warming and man-made climate change. I don't know. Anyway, sorry, Tom. You carry on, mate.
Thank you, Cal.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. So I'm going to hand over to Helen at this point. She's just going to start to walk you through the specific areas of challenge which are contained in the plan. And we'll start by showing you one of the videos that we've been using on social media to describe the work of the plan. So I'll just hand over to Helen at this point.
Can people hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, my screen's a bit plain. I'm going to see if the video will work now in this new setup. I'm not sure if it will, so I'll just... That's me. We were showing the video as an example of one of the 3 videos that we developed as part of the consultation to help try and explain the plan and break it down a little bit more for people and to hopefully try and engage people a little bit more in the topics. We just wanted to take the opportunity to show you one of the sort of, elements of materials that we'd developed. What I'm just going to do now is take you through the challenges that we've developed as part of the plan. So we've set out within the plan a number of the things that we've actually already started doing and some of the achievements that we've made, because we're very conscious that work has been continuing for some time and across many parts of the council. But there's actually 18 challenges that we're setting out, and really in terms of providing the framework for how we move forward in terms of responding to the emergency. As Tom said earlier, we've set these out under sort of 3 different arenas to provide the framework. So the first one is demonstrating strong leadership, and within this section what we've sort of set out is the importance of engaging with the community and listening to them in terms of their priorities for tackling climate change and their ideas as well, and what they want to do to shape that agenda. And this has come through quite strongly in terms of the earlier engagement that we did around Christmas time. We've also recognised through our internal engagement and that previous engagement the importance of raising awareness and showcasing a lot more about the work that we are actually already doing. So there's consistent and clear messages across the council in terms of work undertaken by various services, but we actually take the time to highlight the work that we are doing and the achievements that we make through that, so whether that's through planning policy, through waste management, through work around transport. One of the other critical areas that's come through in the conversations we've been having about is the importance of developing the evidence base and our insights, so we understand more fully the impact of different changes that we make and what they can have, so we can sort of help determine what the focus of attention is and also explain a little bit more about why we're bringing about some of those changes and plan for the future. And then the fourth one under the section of demonstrating strong leadership is about embracing our role as community leaders and how we can influence and enable others to bring about the changes necessary to tackle climate change as well. So that's across the community and with our partners as well. And Tom mentioned earlier the climate charter that we've signed with our partners through the Public Services Board. The next set of challenges are under the heading of fulfilling our responsibility to current and future generations. And these are very much around the range of services and activities that we provide as an organisation that help and enable and facilitate the actions of others. So this includes work that we would do around reducing the risk of flooding and managing the coastline, and also to think a bit more about our water use as well. A lot of the work that's happening through that Marcus is leading on, but again is involving a range of services across the council, is the development of the green infrastructure plan, and again highlighting the importance of our green areas and travel routes and issues such as drainage as well, and again sort of linking into the tree planting programmes that are taking place. We've also then identified the importance of the economic growth strategy, so this links again to some of the recovery work and making sure that that's green, and how we balance some of the work around supporting the economy but also in terms of the environment as well. And then the fourth one we've got here is around our planning policies and regeneration activities, and again thinking about the work that we do there and how they can help to mitigate the effects of climate change and reduce the negative impact on the environment. The next four that we have under this section are around reducing the amount of energy that we all use and leading by example. So again, that's how we can work with our partners to look at innovation and new technologies in terms of how we can change the way we use our energy and reduce it as well. Supporting and advocating more sustainable local food systems, and this again links to things around sort of food miles, less waste, and it's making more choices about the food that we take and the impact that that might have, not just on our own health but on the environment as well. We've then got reducing waste and building on again a lot of work that's been taken forward through Emma's service and the facilities that we need to put in place, so that as well as the clear messages we have about changing behaviour, that we've got the infrastructure in place to support that as well. And similarly in terms of work around transport as well, how we can support the behaviour change there and encourage people to walk more and cycle more. And this again would link to some of the work that's taken place around active travel and recent engagement and consultation on that. The final section of the plan is around making a difference. And here we think about how we revise our contract management and procurement policies. So this is thinking about the services that we directly provide as a council and how we work both as a service provider and an employer. How we are investing in our existing housing stock and our schools to improve the fabric of the buildings and to make those more energy efficient, and the great changes that can be made there. And again, great strides to be made through the programme to improve our school buildings. And then the final challenges are around the managing the use of our land and buildings and other assets. So this supports the work on tackling climate change. So this would link to the reshaping work around the space programme, but also about the energy efficiency measures that have been taking place across our buildings as well. Reducing the number of car journeys that we make as an organisation through our staff. So again, obviously that has very much changed over the past 12 months, but thinking about what future behaviour might look like, and also about the fleet that we have as well and what changes can be made there. And the final one then again builds on changes over the past 12 months, but about investing in technology to support home working, online services and meetings, and reducing the need for travel. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour really through the 18 challenges that provide the framework within the draft plan. So then really it's just to think about whether these are the right challenges and whether these are going to provide the framework for our activity and reflect priorities.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Obviously that was a bit of a whistle-stop, yeah. But you know, but the content was actually very relevant, and I think what's quite apparent is these are tangible things that we can do, and also a lot of it is around common sense with this within our own lives as well. So that was really interesting. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. Okay. Councillor Robertson, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think that's all very interesting, Helen. Thank you very much for that. I mean, I think there's still a problem around whether there's actually full agreement on whether there's such a thing as a climate emergency. You know, that's a very strong word, a climate emergency. I'm very, very keen on cleaning up the environment of the world, but I think we're missing an awful lot of stuff here. I mean, one of the things that we really should be concentrating on is plastic packaging. It's biodetergents, which are going out into the water supply, heavy metals, I mean, basically just to concentrate on carbon, because there's a fear of global warming or climate. But has anybody else noticed that it started off, it was going to be global warming, and then when that didn't really happen, it was climate change. I'm very concerned that we're spending an awful lot of money, an awful lot of time, and an awful lot of effort on one aspect of how we're damaging our planet, and we're not actually dealing with the really serious problems which are building up. How is it that you will go into Tesco and all the vegetables, everything is still packaged in plastic? It's wrong.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Robertson. But bear in mind, this is what we can do as a council. That the entire document, the entire strategy is about what we can do as a council. So I'm not sure, because I've got a couple of other speakers as well. Or Helen, did you want to respond, or Tom?
Yeah, I can certainly. I think. Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I mean, the plan has been produced as a result of the declaration by Council in July 2019. As I said in terms of the introduction, the use of single-use plastics that you mentioned, it is something that within the plan it has been given some consideration, and actually is a really good example of the strides that as an organisation we've already taken. So, for example, our procurement practices now specify that there needs to be a commitment to reducing the use of single-use plastics, and the council's Big Fresh catering company is committed as well to reducing as far as is possible the use of single-use plastic. And it's also a good example of the work that Emma is leading on in terms of waste and recycling. So you'll see within the plan that that's one of the examples of one of the things that we can encourage people within the Vale of Glamorgan to take action on. Exactly as Councillor Brooks was saying, that kind of behaviour change that we need as a community leader to be advocating. So absolutely, it's in the plan, and it's a good example of something that cuts right the way across the plan.
Okay, thank you for that, Tom. I'm going to bring Councillor Gwyn John in next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm having quite a few requests at the moment for charging points for electric vehicles. Have we, I know it's early stages yet, but have we started looking at where we're likely to set about putting these out? And, the other point I've got to make is I'd like to ask Mark, as it's early days, obviously, but what impact is this going to have on your planning, future applications and things like this? It's obviously going to play a big part in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwyn. Who wanted to take the point around the charging point? Is that you, Tom, or Emma?
I think Emma could possibly respond better to that.
Thank you.
Yes, certainly, Chair. So with the charging points, we're about to put a number of charging points in our car parks and on the street within the Barry area. We've been successful in getting money via City Deal for that, so that's implementation is due to start. But we're also looking then at moving, subject to that being successful, moving that out to other towns as well. So that would include potentially looking at Lantwick Major, Penarth, Cowbridge, etc. So there is work ongoing. That particular infrastructure at the moment is dedicated for taxis, but obviously I think as the pressure moves forward, it will be for general public at a charge. We've also got this year £50,000 from Welsh Government. It's not a terrific amount of money, but it's a reasonable amount of money to do a pilot to look at how we can deliver on-street, terrace street infrastructure charging. So we've also got that as a project to look about how we move that forward. But we're definitely seeing an increase in demand. So it doesn't surprise me, Councillor John, that you've had those queries. And I think it's something we need to look at now moving forward. What I would say, it's not just about us as a council providing it. We'd also look at businesses, etc., to be providing relevant points. I'm sure Marcus might have a comment from a planning and regeneration point of view about what they would expect, what he would expect from that. But the ones that are going in, I can share that with you. I've got some work to share it with the Barry members, and we are looking to move it out. Sorry, Marcus, I think you might want to comment on the planning and regen side.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Marcus, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Emma. Yeah, so if I start on that point as Emma's sort of finished on it, one of the things that we're working very closely with Welsh Government around is the requirements for both domestic charging points, but also in terms of offices and businesses and what's necessary, but also from the point of view of regeneration as well, and regeneration schemes. So when we take schemes forward, that there is capacity there for charging points and for cars. I think it's a really valid point that Emma makes, that while we can start it off as a council, clearly as we move forward, it will become a commercial situation, a bit like petrol filling stations, that type of thing going forward, so that we have to get the ball rolling, and once that ball starts rolling, clearly the hope is that the private sector would pick that up and move forward. But there is this regulatory side that the planning system, for one, has a really clear role in encouraging the provision of electric charging points. Going wider, obviously, Councillor John has mentioned the planning system. It's a combination, I think, of planning system, but also the building regulation system that will bring through quite substantial changes to new house building over the next 5 to 10 years. We are probably in the last gasp of gas boilers in houses, so we will be looking at much different techniques for heating houses going forward. Passive houses are very, very high on the agenda. So by passive house, I mean a house basically which is completely carbon neutral in terms of its energy needs and heating needs. For example, our housing colleagues are looking very closely at those types of houses for the council stock and for building new council houses. So, the answer is, at this stage, the picture actually is still not quite clear. Changes are being made to the building regulation system constantly, year on year, and probably quicker than year on year, actually, probably in 6-month gaps, bringing in tighter and tighter restrictions on what builders need to provide in terms of energy efficiency for homes. That will, I'm sure, pick up speed, but from a planning perspective, obviously, there's also the requirement that when we approve schemes, that the requirements are included. Now, unfortunately, we were, I think, in Wales slightly slower on some areas and slightly faster on others. But I know Welsh Government are very clear of what their ambitions are in terms of housing going forward, and it will be to get to a position where most homes are carbon neutral in terms of their construction within a very short space of time, and absolutely certainly by 2030. Now, I can't give you guarantees in terms of what they're going to ask for. We are working with colleagues in Welsh Government, and they are looking at it very, very closely. But that's probably, it's a fair guess to say that most new homes probably in the next 5 years are going to have to be virtually carbon neutral to be constructed. That will add cost, but obviously that will be a requirement which house builders will have to take into account.
Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, I can bring Councillor Michael Morgan in next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me all right? Yes, good. 2 points really. The climate emergency is an emergency. It's something we have to take very seriously. And I'm assuming our discussion tonight is really about the nature of this consultation rather than the nitty-gritty. So I've got 2 points really. Is how do we get people to engage with this consultation? Because what I've noticed in my limited time as a councillor is that people just don't engage. You get very small responses when we go to the trouble of putting these consultations out there. And if it's limited to social media and the press as it is now, how do we get it out into the communities? Can there be like road shows or presentations in communities to get the message out? This is important and you want people's views. And the second part of this is really how these points can be addressed in the more rural parts of the Vale. because we're not in the Highlands of Scotland here. I mean, any of the villages is perhaps not more than half a dozen miles from one of the towns. I might be proven wrong on that, but it does concern me a little bit that when we talk about active travel and matters like that, it's all to do with Barry and Cowbridge and Penarth and the towns. And really, those of us who live a little bit further out, it's not addressed at all. And you have a situation where in certain times in planning applications, we're described as not being sustainable communities. But I think we need to address how travel can be improved, how multi-generational planning and living can be addressed in the rural communities so that they remain sustainable. You know, we have a bus service out here, but it's terribly outdated. It's one bus every 2 hours, which goes back and forth empty to Cardiff when people might want to go to Barry or Cowbridge or elsewhere. Now, as part of this consultation, can we look at how transport links between everywhere can be improved? You know, because there are older people living out here who might not have access to transport and essentially end up being housebound because they can't go anywhere. That there must be some way. I mentioned earlier I picked up the word taxis. I mean, isn't there a way of introducing a taxi network to serve communities? Because it must cost a lot of money to send an empty bus back and forth when there are people who might just want to get to Tesco's at Culverhouse Cross. It's only 3.5 miles from here, but there's no transport as such. Neighbours support one another, yes, and that's part of the community feel. But in my community, you've got Peterston, Pendolan, Welsh St Donat, St Bride's, St George's, and all the community councils are very concerned about the climate emergency, and it's on their agendas at every meeting. And there is a cluster group being developed to try and push this forward as far as the people who live out here are concerned. But I would just hope that as part of this consultation, we are seeing as a community of the Vale of Glamorgan that includes everybody, and everybody gets a fair crack and everybody is listened to. So number one, I hope that this consultation can be brought out properly to everybody so everybody can have their say. And I hope that everybody is included wherever they might live. You know, we get more noise from the civic areas, but everybody, each person is important, aren't they? So it's perhaps not a question, but just an observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. And I think you've raised two incredibly important points there, is around that consultation and about, obviously you've got the towns, but how you're going to help and assist those in rural communities. And I think those are incredibly valid points. Does anybody want to answer? Do any of the officers want to answer those for now? Or whether there's something we could actually, because we can feed our views back into to Cabinet as well, so we could actually include those points. But in the meantime, Marcus, did you indicate you wanted to respond?
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's only very quickly just to say that I think those views are very, very valid, and you know, as part of this process, I think Tom would welcome. I'm speaking for Tom now. I shouldn't do that, but Tom would welcome the comments being made, and of course, transport is a key part of net zero and will be considered as part of the I'm speaking for Emma now, I shouldn't be doing that either, but will be considered as part of the process. So yeah, just a really quick response on that basis. Okay,
thank you, Marcus. Tom, did you want to come in at this point?
Only to thank Councillor Morgan for the comments around the consultation. I'm going to cover a little bit about our consultation programme in the next section of the presentation, but yes, absolutely. The intention is that this is also not an 8-week public consultation on a document, and then that's the end of the conversation. So a little bit later on in the session, Councillor Morgan, I'll describe the work that we're underway, and if certainly, as Marcus was saying, if you've got any views in terms of how we can expand that reach, we'd be absolutely delighted to hear them, definitely.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Emma, did you want to come in?
Only just really quickly for Councillor Morgan, and there are a number of workshops that are planned, aren't there, Tom, as part of the consultation, and one of those workshops is on transport. So I think if you've got those views and you want to get those rural views across, it would be really good if you could have a representative from your community to come to that transport session. and Tom will probably give more details about that as he gets towards the end of his presentation, but that would be really good to have that rural view as well as those urban views.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Right, I've got the next councillor to speak is Ruba. Ruba, did you want to come in now?
Hello, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So I couldn't not comment on Councillor Robertson's comments about climate change, as you would suspect. You know, as Councillor Morgan has just said, we're not here to discuss that. There is a climate emergency. I'm really proud that our council is taking this lead and is doing this work, because this is really, really important work. You know, we only have to look at our environment and the world to see what's happening. So this is real, and we need to work you know, quickly and positively around this. So I'm really proud that it's, you know, our council is doing this work. So, you know, thank you to all of you for doing it, and you know, and leadership from this council. So two of the points I was going to raise have already been raised by Councillor John and Councillor Morgan, which is around the consultation and you know, how this will affect planning. Because I'm assuming, because Welsh Government, well, if re-elected, are committed to building, you know, 20,000, you know, green homes, that, you know, we are part of, you know, whatever that's going to look like. So Marcus, you know, you've answered that point. And on the consultation, Tom, you know that I would raise the issue of consultation. So you know, again, it's as Councillor Morgan was saying, it's how we reach as many people as possible to actually, you know, give this the support and backing that it, you know, that it deserves in terms of how we're going forward. So and just my final point really is, as part of that the consultation process, is you know, what are other councils doing around this, those that have declared a climate emergency, and you know, what kind of challenges have they given that this is about the challenges, what kind of challenges have they given themselves, and do you feel that we're on a par or ahead of that? That's it, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ruba. Tom, did you want to come back in?
I could quickly come back in on that last point, if that's useful, Chair, in terms of the work that this council is doing, and whether we've looked at other councils. Definitely through the professional networks which the organisation is part of, both in terms of politicians and officers, there's a lot of sharing of good practice and understanding as to what's going on. In terms of us pulling together our plan, we absolutely looked at the work that others were doing. Some councils have got plans which are focused in almost exclusively on the activities that they undertake, which makes a lot of sense. I think the direction that we were set by the Cabinet was that this should be something that the authority has control over, but also reflects the community leadership work. This is not just about the Vale of Glamorgan Council's carbon emissions being at net zero by 2030. This is about encouraging that behaviour change, which we've discussed previously, so that we can have a maximum kind of impact. And I think it was really pleasing at the February meeting of the Public Services Board, where you had the police, the UHB, Natural Resources Wales, all coming together and committing to taking collective action within the Vale. And I think it's there that the ambition feels somewhat different. And obviously I'll come back to the consultation piece in a little while as well.
Sorry, Tom, sorry, Chair, just to come back on that point, if I may. Yeah. So in terms, I think the behaviour point is, and that's where this does stand out, because it is about behaviour, and it is about you know, changing how people behave around these things, you know, whether it's single-use plastic or carbon, you know, electric cars in the future and so on. So that is really important, and so connected to that really is how we gauge that. So how do we gauge success around that is another question. Sorry.
Absolutely, and it's one I think, Councillor, that we're trying to take a bit of a temperature check through the consultation, both in terms of what people's views are about the commitments or the challenges that we set out for ourselves as an organisation, but we're also asking some specific questions about people's appetite for change across different areas of their personal lives as well, to actually understand where people are, and therefore that would lead us to understanding what are some of the things as an organisation we might be able to do to help facilitate that kind of change. So that's the kind of starting point, I guess. And then in terms of the understanding of the impact, Helen was describing one of the challenges in terms of building that evidence base, understanding that insight and those measures so that we can understand things. So there needs to be an ongoing way of measuring and understanding the impact that this work is having.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Tom. I'm going to bring Councillor Stephen William. Stephen, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, this is an enormous piece of work, and I'm probably going to bore you to death here because I'll be the nth person to say thank you. But we do need to say thank you to you people for preparing this report. It is fantastic. It's a massive piece of work, and we're only at the beginning here. But for my two penneth worth, I suppose that there are two issues I'd like to raise. One of which has kind of been mostly answered, which was, I just want to be specific, which is about, firstly, the offsetting of the carbon footprint of any development. Now, we're talking about green homes, but I'm talking about any development. And I mean, I'm asking really, is there a specific commitment then to say that we as a council want to offset the carbon footprint of any development by 100% or aim for that? And then the second question here, it's I'm sure in other consultations it's going to be referred to, it's what I call the elephant in the room, and that is with an incinerator that hasn't yet been operational in this town, how do we square that one? I mean, the emissions from that, I mean, I know you can answer about future developments, obviously, but this is one that, as far as I'm concerned, in my perspective, threatens this town now. And I wonder what officers' take is on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Who wanted to come in to answer Stefan's points? He's got the 2 points there. It's about specific, about a commitment, about offsetting our carbon footprint. And then also then around the incinerator. So who would like to answer that? Marcus? Yeah.
I can answer the second question if that's okay. So if I come in on that one first around the biomass plant, obviously the biomass plant originally gained consent in 2015. It has, and before that in 2010, on the back of appeal from Welsh Government. So, we can't really comment on that. I would say that the basis for the original approval and the second approval in 2015 was a renewable energy plant, and it meets the terms of a renewable energy plant. And on that basis, the energy which would be recovered from it, if it ever started, would be deemed to be renewable energy and would be considered as green as the energy you get from wind turbines and other renewable energy sources. That being said, obviously what has been built does not match what was approved in 2015, and that is a matter that's yet to be resolved, and I can't really comment any further on that.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Did anybody want to touch around this specific, Stefan's asked about the specific commitment to offset carbon, or is that going to be later in the presentation?
I can take that one, and Marcus may want to
Okay.
to come back in as well. The commitment within the plan is for the organisation's activities to be carbon zero by 2030. So that's talking about the activities that are directly within our control. I think that's probably the easiest way to describe the actual target for the organisation. Where Project Zero goes wider, Councillor, is in our commitment to encourage others to reduce their impact as well. So I think that's probably the two parts, if you like, of the plan.
And Chair, if you want just to sort of add to that, obviously the planning process will seek to have its role in achieving that, but obviously there will be legislation alongside construction of new buildings and new businesses, which will probably seek as well to control and ensure that that happens. And then, of course, referring to offsetting, there are things like obviously solar farms, solar panels, renewable energy sources, which will be seen to take part in that role of providing energy. It may well be that those types of development will be developed in the future in a way that actually means they don't go into the national grid and they directly supply offices and houses. So that will have a role as well.
Thank you for that, and thank you, Chair. And yeah, that was one other thing that I picked up on from Tom earlier, which was the encouragement of others to act. And there's a bigger picture. I get that, but yeah, I guess I'm yet to see a stick our necks on the line regarding the planning process, but I do appreciate what Marcus said there, and yeah, that there's more than one way to achieve the 0%. Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Okay, I'm going to bring in Councillor Vince Driscoll now. Vince?
Hi, thanks, Chair. Just a question of Marcus, really, regarding charging points. Am I right in saying that they can only go where Western Power want them to go because the infrastructure isn't there at the moment? Is that correct?
Chair, it's probably for Emma. Emma, do you want to respond on that one?
You dodged that one, didn't you?
Oh, it's a team effort tonight.
Yeah, go on in.
Yeah. So technically, yes, they've got to have the right, right infrastructure in place. And I know the work I described earlier that we've been doing in Barry has been problematic because the correct infrastructure isn't there. So we have had to go to other locations which meet WPD's requirements. Having said that, we have been working with them on where we can provide them. So I think it's been as best as you can get a partnership approach with them. But yeah, in technical terms, you're right. We've got to liaise with them to get it in the right location. For example, on Halton Road, a lot of the cabling isn't fit for charging. So we've had to go to car parks and to other locations. And I'm sure we'll find that elsewhere. But it's all about this joint approach, isn't it? And trying to find the solution to it. And WPD have been pretty good in what we've done.
Okay, and another question for Marcus, actually, if you can answer this. What do you anticipate the extra cost on a zero emission house will put on it? The extra for building.
Okay, it's very difficult to quantify, but at the moment the estimates are ranging between £6,000 and £25,000, which is not a very good estimate, because a lot depends on, for example, what heating systems are installed in the future to replace gas, and other items around what charging points. So a good point, just to sort of come in again on what Emma said earlier. Obviously, WPD have been fantastic in as much as they've really moved much more quickly than we expected them to do, and to have worked much more closely with the council on where you can put charging points and can't. And it's a point that actually some charging points, if you're at the very, very lowest level on those sort of trickle charging points, they can pretty much be installed anywhere, but they're not very useful because obviously it takes so long to charge cars up. And so if you are going to put charging points which are much faster, then you need to look at the different phases of electricity that you need to provide to those points. And of course, that would increase costs for houses, for example, if you were doing that, or indeed if you did it on a close by close or a sort of a housing estate basis, it would increase costs. So it's very difficult to say, Councillor, what the exact costs will be. I think it's fair to say that houses will cost more. The lowest estimates are somewhere between 6,000 and the highest estimates are above 20. Mm-hmm. But again, technology will reduce those costs going forward. And I think, there is no, just to sort of finish this point, there is no preferred option for replacing heating in houses. There are a number of different studies looking at electricity, looking at different forms of solar, looking at ground source, looking at air source. And each one of those has a different cost and a different implication on the cost of the house. It is fairly certain that within the next 18 months, there will be a decision, partly helped by Welsh Government and national government, around which is the best source of replacement heating. Mm-hmm. And that will be probably the biggest single item in terms of how much a house will cost going forward in the future. So I think these things will change. They sound expensive now, but will probably come down as time moves forward.
Okay, thank you, Marcus.
Good, thank you, Marcus. I've got two cabinet members with us tonight as well. I've got Councillor Liz Burnett, who's actually here to represent the leader, whose report it is, because he's at another meeting this evening, and then followed them by Councillor Peter King. So, Liz, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think when this came to Cabinet, my comment was that I'm really thrilled at the amount of work that's been done already. And I think that the thanks that have been given by committee to the officers concerned are really well deserved. I mean, particularly Helen, she's driven the process through the PSB as well, so that is really excellent. But I think we can't underestimate the size of the task ahead of us. And in preparation for today, I actually did a little bit. I went back and re-looked at the report that the original motion was based on when it went to council, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is it's not some small little body. It's related to the United Nations, and it was all related to the adoption of the Paris Agreement, and some of the implications in there that we can look at in terms of, we can go and plant wildflower meadows, but if climate change has meant that those pollinators actually inhabit a different area, or the area that they occur in has changed as a result. If we go for our day trip to go and look at puffins, and we find that they're not there because the Gulf Stream has changed, has moved, and their food stock no longer arrives at the same time as them. So we don't actually see a mass die out, but we actually suddenly find that there are less and less of them occurring until one day we say, well, we used to go and see puffins there. So those sorts of things. A lot of this is said to kick in more up to sort of 2050, and I probably won't be around there. If we look at the impact of the trajectory we're around. But actually, there's probably nothing more important that we can do at the moment for the future of those generations that come behind us. And that's why we have to grasp this hugely difficult task. I'm really pleased that officers have embraced it, and it is cross-cutting to see officers from different teams here tonight, obviously, demonstrably working closely together on this area is very encouraging. Talking about passive house technology, but actually we've already held Meet the Buyer events, talking to contractors, etc., that want to learn that new technology to look at developing supply chains within the Vale. And we talk about community leadership. That is not just for Cabinet or for a senior leadership team within the council. That is for every single one of us to be talking to people in our communities, sharing the consultation, talking to people about it, so that the actions that we take forward are the right ones for our communities, but also our country. I was really encouraged to see on the news today that the UK government has now said that they will set a course to cut carbon emissions by 78% by 2035. And I applaud that. And I think it's really important that we are also setting our own agenda on behalf of the residents of the Vale. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Liz. And I think there's some incredibly important points in there. And the very fact that we are laying the foundations for those future generations. I mean, many of us won't be around by 2050, or may not be around by then, but you know, it's our children, it's their children and their children's children. It is those future generations. And it is a very, very true fact that if we don't try and do something now, and this will be a movable feast, without a doubt, this will change as time goes on, but unless we start somewhere, then nothing will happen. So I'm going to bring in now is Councillor Peter King, and then I'm going to go back to the presentation. I'm just conscious that time is, you know, we have spent a fair amount of time so far, but very valid time. So Councillor King, not that I'm trying to rush you, Peter. Then again, he's on mute, so that's fine. Peter, you're on mute.
I'm mindful of the time myself, and I thank you, Chair, and members of the committee. All I wanted to do is to go, because everything else has been addressed, I think, pretty much, but I would like to go back to a comment that Councillor Robertson made in his opening comments, and that about plastic wrapping. My understanding is this report is more to do with this council's involvement with Project Zero, and therefore we have to play our part within that. But I hope that the end user responsibility legislation that's coming from Westminster, and I hope the Senate will take on as well, will put a greater burden upon, and I hesitate to say Mr. Kipling, so I won't, but the manufacturers for their incredible use of packaging, and then leaving us as a council to sort out the mess and clear it all up. So I do hope there's going to be some but I don't think that's we help clear it up and recycle it, but we can't help prevent it. Others need to do that. And the other one is that he mentioned the chemicals in some products, and particularly detergents, but I can think of countless other products that are readily available. For example, we do not use glyphosate as a council. But there are I'm not entirely sure, but there's 14,000 people who live in Penarth, and anybody over 18 can go out and buy a weed killer, which will contain glyphosate and doesn't have to be trained in how they use it, and can use it quite extensively, whatever it does to bees. So I think he's absolutely right. There are other issues, but I think we need to focus upon what we as the Vale can do. And that was all I wanted to say, because I think his point was valid. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, Tom, I'm going to hand back to you now for the second part of the presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Has the presentation started showing on your screen again? Excellent. That's the first test for me. I was just going to describe in a little bit more detail this programme of consultation that we've got underway. It launched on the 24th of March. It's running until the 12th of May, and this is the consultation, importantly, on this challenge document, the plan that we've got in front of you. But as I said earlier, we very much see this as the beginning of a conversation that needs to happen throughout the life of Project Zero. Because of the world in which we're currently living in, we are more reliant than we would ordinarily be on digital means for undertaking this consultation. And Councillor Morgan earlier was talking about is it possible to go out and do road shows and those kind of face-to-face events? At the moment, it's a challenge, which is why we're relying more so on starting this conversation online. So there is a survey running currently, and before the end of your meeting, Chair, I'll put a link into the chat of the meeting that takes you to the consultation page outlining the different things that we're doing. But the consultation was launched with a message from the Managing Director of the Council to a range of partners. It went to each of the 26 town and community councils, for example, as well as local interest groups and other networks, in order that we try and get the message out, because we are very keen to hear as many views on this as possible. And this survey is being promoted via a range of different networks and contacts right across the council. Councillor Burnett talked about this being cross-cutting, and the strategic leadership team have committed to both Project Zero, but also the consultation process and using all of our networks and contacts. So the primary method at the moment is promoting this via social media. So members may have seen things on Twitter and Facebook being shared. I'll show you a couple of examples and some Twitter polls in a moment as well. And Emma also mentioned the 4 online discussion groups that we're holding. So they're going to be over the next few weeks on different subjects, inviting people to come along, learn a little bit more about what we're doing, but importantly for us to hear the different views, and if members are able to share the details of that with anybody that they think would be interested in coming, we'd be really grateful to do that. We are also conscious of wanting to reach out to young people and to older people, so that's the reason for progressing this work through the Youth Forum and also through the Vale 50 Plus Strategy Forum. We've been really encouraged by the amount of work that's going on in our schools. We talked earlier about things like the 21st Century Schools programme, but schools are real trailblazers in this arena. So we are writing out to each of the head teachers to ask them if they've got information that they'd like to share. It's some really good practice that's going on in our schools, but importantly to make the links with the activity they may be undertaking in the coming years. That's part of, as I say, of this kind of ongoing conversation. Importantly, we're here this evening. We'll be at Scrutiny Committee at Corporate Performance and Resources tomorrow evening, and also at Community Liaison Committee, so that we have an opportunity to talk with town and community councils next week, as well as the Voluntary Sector Joint Liaison Committee, so reaching out to the third sector as well to understand what their views are, and those are things that we're doing next week as part of the consultation. We've mentioned the Public Services Board Climate Change Charter. There is a group that is drawn together of officers from each of those PSB partner organisations to progress the work in that charter, and they're a really important part of consulting on our plan, but also importantly in terms of delivering on it as well. Councillor Morgan made the point around getting as much engagement with these kind of plans as possible, and you know, committee will know that I love a good plan. The annual delivery plan, the corporate plan, and Project Zero as a challenge plan is absolutely what gets me up in the morning, but I can appreciate that not everybody wants to go through 40 pages worth of corporate document, and whilst we are getting some really good responses to the online survey, what we also want to do is take the temperature on individual subjects, and we thought we'd try this using Twitter polls, and there's a couple of examples here. Over the last week, we've been asking questions about people's personal behaviours. In the coming weeks, because the response has been quite good to these, we'll start to talk about some of our corporate commitments and what people feel about those individually. So this just gives you an example of how we can take a quick kind of measure of what people think via social media, asking them about whether they've made changes to their home to become more energy efficient, or whether they commit to buying more local produce. And these are just things that we can play in to build a bit of a picture to inform the consultation, and importantly then, as we said earlier, to look at the actions that we can take going forward. So Councillor Burnett talked about this being a cross-cutting plan, and integration and insight are really key to delivering Project Zero. So what we're looking to do here is bring together the lots of different plans and strategies to make sure that there is that consistency in our ambition to tackle climate change, that it's all brought together in one place. And that has the benefit then of being able to develop and share the expertise. You'll have seen Emma, Marcus and I this evening fielding the same questions together, because we can build that collective understanding in order to identify solutions and opportunities. I make no apology for saying it's about keeping the conversation going, because, as Marcus mentioned, technology is developing all the time. The opportunities are developing all the time. So we need to understand the impact that we're having, and also the public opinion as we go. And we need to make sure we put in place really robust governance arrangements so that we can understand and monitor the delivery of Project Zero. So to drive this forward, it'll be overseen by the Reshaping Board. That's the Transformation Programme Board for the Council, which is the Cabinet and Strategic Leadership team. So that demonstrates absolutely where this sits in terms of the organisation's agenda. We have the Insight Board within the Council that brings together representatives from across the organisation, both in terms of our service departments, but our corporate departments as well, to make sure that this is developed and that the connections are made. There's an important role for our technical staff. We've got great expertise in the Vale, whether that's energy, planning, transportation, active travel, and it's about bringing them together so that we can spark that kind of innovation and creativity. And as always, we'll link in with external expertise where we need to and where we would benefit from. And it's been good to start to work with people like the Welsh Government's Energy Service, for example, in order to start to do that. We've got a good track record within the Vale of engaging and involving our staff. Your committee will remember that back in the autumn we ran a series of lunchtime sessions with our colleagues to really understand what kind of ideas they had. So we'll continue that conversation with them, because the successful delivery of this plan doesn't just rest with a small number of people. It's about a step change for the organisation as a whole. I've mentioned the PSB, and they will have an important role in taking forward this work as part of the Charter. And obviously, as the Scrutiny Committee, there's a very important role in terms of scrutinising our progress, and we'll be bringing you regular updates on this, both as part of the standard performance management reporting arrangements that you have, Chair, on a quarterly basis, but also periodic reviews in terms of the delivery of Project Zero as a whole. So finally, in conclusion, the timetable for progressing this piece of work around the challenge plan is that we consult between the 25th of March and the 12th of May. We'll spend the rest of the month of May then looking at that feedback in detail and doing any redrafting work that we need to do. And then we'll bring, alongside colleagues, an updated version back to your committee and to corporate performance in June, also explain what the consultation feedback was, and that's an opportunity then for your committee chair to comment on that draft ahead of it going to Cabinet for final consideration on the 5th of July. And as it was a council declaration, we'll be looking to take the final plan back to full council just before the summer recess. So I guess the questions that we had finally were reflecting back on, are these the right challenges in the framework as we've discussed? Is it ambitious enough? And is this going to deliver what we've set out in terms of our ambition for tackling climate change?
Okay, thank you, Tom. Very interesting how far-reaching the consultation is going to be, albeit with the restrictions around COVID. And I'm also really pleased to see that we're actually, as a committee, going to be able to get a second bite of the cherry around that consultation and the feedback as well. Okay, I've got Councillor Andy Robertson. Did you want to come in, Andy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for that, Tom. That's very interesting, and I was quite struck by those two slides you showed of people who are trying to improve their homes in terms of energy and also their buying habits. Are those just examples that you were made up, or are those actual figures? 65.
No, they are actual figures. They're
so
screenshots.
65% of people say they buy local. Now, when they say they buy local, does that mean they go down to Tesco's to buy asparagus from Argentina, or does it mean that they try and source their food produce and other produce as locally produced? Because there's a huge difference. I mean, there's a massive difference. If you're serious about carbon emissions, then the difference between buying locally produced products and buying in a shop locally products which have come from all over the world, big difference.
The question that that they were answering, Councillor Robertson, was, would you commit to buying more local produce? So, and of the 49 people who voted, as you said, 65% of people said, yes, I already buy local produce.
They already buy local produce. 65% of people, really? I don't believe that. I just cannot believe that 65% of people actually buy.
Yeah. Well, people have responded to the survey, and that's all the data that we can go on, Councillor Robertson. So we can't say that we don't believe what people have responded. Okay, so I'm going to bring in Councillor Michael Morgan next.
Yes, thank you, Tom. It gets more interesting as you go on. It's fascinating. My only concern is whether we've set quite a tight timetable on this. I know that the chair has said we got effectively another bite of the consultation later on, but this consultation closes on the 12th of May, which is not a long time. And certainly so far, for example, for the community councils out here who meet in the first and second week of each month, they haven't had opportunity to discuss that at any length because it's only just come to their attention. So it would be discussed maybe at the meetings next month, which is quite tight if the councils want to engage with their local communities. So I'm just wondering, is there scope to extend this consultation period, because this is such an important thing? But I make no criticism of the way you planned it out, because it has been scheduled very well. But we have the challenge of people not being able to go out and discuss things properly. That might change in the next month or so, but there's very limited scope for engaging one-on-one with people at the moment. Or if the time can't be extended, can we say there is scope for re-engagement on these issues as the year goes on? Because it's a, as has been said previously, a continuing conversation. We're not going to come up with the answer to this within the next couple of months. It is a continuing thing. But is there scope to give a little bit more time to the consultation period? Thank you.
The consultation period itself, as you say, Councillor, is tight, and it's driven by the timetable and production of meeting papers in order that we can get back to council before the recess. Certainly, we can undertake to have a conversation around the potential to extend it, but I think more importantly is the point you made around that ongoing conversation and engagement of people. I suppose it's important to say that we're running a consultation process at the moment on the challenge plan. So is this the right kind of plan collectively or holistically to set the ambition for the organisation? Within that, there are so many different areas of activity, and actually it's going to be really important to engage with people on a regular basis as part of that. Certainly I can undertake to look at whether there is any scope. But I would say that actually, I think it's more important that we commit to making sure that we have that ongoing programme of conversation and consultation with people as we deliver this, rather than necessarily giving an extra week or two on just this document. But we can certainly undertake to have a look at the timetable.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, Councillor Pam Drake is next.
Yes, I was going to talk about the consultation, particularly with the schools. I don't know how you were dealing that with the schools, because they've been so disruptive over the last several months. It's not going to be easy for them, and it's vital they come on board, because it's their future we're talking about, and a lot of these young people are very passionate about their environment. So I was just wondering how you were engaging with them.
Thank you, Councillor Drake. I think that's probably a really good example of where actually the ongoing consultation and engagement is really important, rather than necessarily trying to get everything done within this 8-week period. We've got a conversation happening with the head teacher of Barry Island Primary School in the next couple of weeks. They've approached us because they've seen the work that is underway within Project Zero, but they actually want to talk about the work that they've got happening within their school. As you say, there's a phenomenal amount of work that the schools are doing. So the managing director is going to be writing out to all head teachers shortly to basically give an open invitation to discuss the issues that are contained within Project Zero with us, not necessarily just within the next few weeks. We want to build that relationship with the schools on an ongoing basis, and I guess that offer is twofold. It's one, is there anything as a local authority that we can do to support the work that's already underway within schools? So do they want us to talk to them about travel or transport or the built environment and share our expertise? But the thing that I'm really excited about is actually understanding the views of the young people that we've got in our schools and the work that they're doing, and actually how could that inform our plan. So that's an example, I think, of my response to Councillor Morgan in terms of that ongoing conversation and learning with our schools throughout the delivery of the plan.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, I've got nobody else has indicated that they want to speak. So Tom, did you want to go to the final part of the presentation?
I wrapped the last two bits up together. Oh, my apologies, okay. Chair.
That's all right. Okay, well, we've had a really good discussion around this, and it's really great to see actually the majority of the committee, I think, do fully support what the work the officers have put in, and also the work of cabinet members as well. It's a hugely important issue, and as I've already mentioned, you know, this is just the very start. These are the building blocks, and there's an awful long way to go, and a lot of changes will come in the future. So, you know, and I'm proud of us as a council that we're actually putting something firmly on that agenda. So I'm really good to see that. Now, we've got, I've got the recommendation there that Cabinet are actually looking for our views to feed back to them as part of this consultation. And I think I've got a few points. I've tried to make some notes as we've gone along. And I think a couple of the really important points around the consultation, to make it as far-reaching as possible, particularly in like with rural communities and those who are actually, you know, those people who are hard to reach. Obviously there are restrictions around COVID, and it's also about whether it could be considered to actually extend that consultation. So we'd like to raise that as part of our consideration. And also then highlighting the importance of transport, particularly in rural communities, and the towns as well, and to actually link these areas up so that people can use it safely, cheaply, and that would encourage them people to maybe start leaving their cars at home. If there's a regular service that does connect up all our areas, and again it brings then the people in from those rural communities to actually get around the Vale and further into Cardiff as well. Further again, obviously, as well. I think another point I think we need to feed back is around how this will affect planning, because obviously these are important considerations, particularly with the Vale. We're very attractive for development, as we know, and there are big plans around affordable housing, about those passive housing, you know, and there's how this is all going to impact on that. And I think it's a really important highlighted point that we need to make as part of the consultation. And obviously there'll be lots of further work around that in the future as well. And I think we had we talked about the charging points for electric vehicles, but obviously that's an ongoing piece of work. But I do think it's worth highlighting again to feed back into the consultation about the need for these points, and actually welcome the work that is ongoing and underway with Western Power as well for their side of it as well. So I think that's worth highlighting, and also about the specific commitments then around offsetting the carbon footprint for the council as well. Right, Pam, did you want to come in?
Yes, I have requested this before. It's been some time since we've had a report on coastal erosion, which obviously comes under the umbrella of this report, you know. So,
yeah.
You know, perhaps somebody can have a look at that, because when you see that what happened up in North Wales, you know, it's quite frightening.
Yeah. Okay. I got Councillor Peter King is looking to. Is it to bring in onto this point, Peter?
It is, Chair. If I may comment. Following the extensive floods we endured in both Dinas and Sully in the on the 23rd of December, our available resources a little bit, and I'll just share that with you so that you understand. We will attack these issues however we have resources, when we have resources. But I think it's only fair for you to know. Thank you.
There was coastal erosion and flooding, Chair, wasn't there? There was two requests, wasn't there? They are on the list, and I have spoken to the team manager. But as I said, we just got a little bit of a resource issue in there at the moment with the Section 19 and with another very important scheme, which is the landmass flood alleviation scheme, which is coming to a crescendo. I think that's the right word. So obviously those two schemes are priority, but definitely I agree. I think it would be useful, particularly in light of what's happened in North Wales, albeit a slightly different circumstance and a slightly different cliff face there. I still think you'd be quite interested to know what's happening on our coastline. So I'll definitely pick it up, Councillor Drake, no problem.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question of Councillor King, if that's possible?
Yes, very quickly.
He broke up a little bit, but could he tell us when the Section 19 report on the flooding will be complete, or has he got any idea at the moment?
It's a decision that Emma and I were talking about earlier today, and my understanding is that Emma is going to buy in the expertise to conclude the Section 19, because it is terribly important. So I reported to the last full council that it could be mid-April. It is now it's gone mid-April. So I am acutely aware, committee and councillor, and yes, as I say, I'm confident Emma will as soon as she can access or buy in the help, it will be concluded.
Yeah, I'm slightly confused because I didn't think the council were involved in a Section 19. I just thought we actually an outside body. Was it Arab or no? I can't remember the company. Sorry, but I didn't think it was a council report. Is that, obviously I'm wrong there? Is that correct, Emma? Or...
Yeah. So we've had what I call technical assistance to get the information for the report, but our officers have been out knocking door to door to find out exactly what's happened at various locations, and what we get is all that information back and pull that together. If it would be helpful to committee, I'll try and come back with a date of when I expect that to come back separately. I'll send something to Councillor King, and then he can obviously distribute it via the committee if that's useful.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Emma. That would be great. Okay, Councillor Gwyn John, you're waiting to speak.
Just quickly, Chairman, to catch up on something that was just mentioned about flooding. Now, across the Lantern Major area, we've had a number of problems with flooding, not just over the Landmace part of our ward, which has been flooded since 1998, which hopefully we will make progress soon. But now that we're looking at putting more money into flooding areas. There are certainly a number of areas across the Vale, in the rural Vale, and obviously this last winter we've had Powys flooding. So, I mean, we've really got to address this in a big way now, because it's not just where we used to try and make up in the past with what money we had, or beg Welsh Government. Welsh Government are going to have to come forward now. If they want us to do this successfully, then we've certainly got to have more funding coming in, and all of this attacked right across the Vale. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Gwyn. Would committee be happy to add just as part of our feedback and comments into about the impact of flooding has had in the past and the increased flooding that we've received now, and obviously likely to be more increased than in the future as well, which obviously it is completely affected by the climate emergency. So should we add that in as well? Yeah. Okay, so I think I've got all the points there. Has anybody got any other point that they'd like to add to it? I think I've got it all down. No? Lovely, that's great. Okay then, so well, thank you to everybody who's come along tonight to discuss it, and thank you, Tom, and thank you very much, Helen, as well, for the work that you've done, as you say, particularly on the PSB. There's a huge amount of work there. So I'd like to just thank you coming along. I know you've got to do this all again now tomorrow night, but it is really good report, and I think it's been an excellent discussion, very interesting discussion I think we've had tonight. So we've got our thoughts then feeding back into that consultation, and then we'll look forward to it to coming back to this committee then later on. Just as a quick note as well, Tom has put the link to the consultation. It's in the meeting chat if anybody wants to pick that up from there as well, then if they want to respond, or obviously pass that on as well to any organisations or people that they know as well to link into that. Sorry, I've lost my agenda now. Right, I haven't got any other items on the agenda for this evening. So I'd just like to thank Councillor Robertson. Did you want to say something?
Yeah.
Just wrapped up.
Sorry to be a nuisance, but could I ask that going on from here with the consultation, that people who are being consulted are aware of the difference between buying in produce in their local Tesco's and buying locally produced produce are two different things.
Well, I think the question was actually quite clear that they put out to consultation. Do you want to just reiterate that, Tom?
Absolutely. I mean, I can certainly undertake to make sure that the framing of all of the questions that we ask is really explicit. And as I said earlier, the question was around buying more local produce, but I can certainly can undertake to have a look at that wording, no problem at all.
Yeah, I do make that point as a farmer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Okay, so I said I haven't got any other items on the agenda this evening, so I'd just like to thank everybody for their contribution. It's been a really interesting discussion, I think, and everybody's had very positive feedback into that. So that's all we've got on the agenda tonight. So I'd just like to wish everybody a good night, and thank you again to the officers for all your work around this. Thank you.
Good night, Chair.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.